Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Sunday to you. It's great to have you here today. Thank you so much for being a part of our service today. We're going to be in the book of Colossians, chapter 1. I'm going to read the passage in just a second, but if you want to be turning there, that would be great. I'll have it on the screen as well. If you don't have it, if you have your device or Bible, let me encourage you to turn there, and we'll read it in just a second. It's always great to have the privilege to speak to you. Today, we're talking about greater, and we're talking about giving and serving. And we talk about giving all the time because Jesus gave more than anybody else. He was always giving. That's the whole reason that he came. So we talk about giving a lot around here. Every now and then, we talk about giving money. And today is one of those days. And if you're a guest, and I know we have people here that are here for the first time or maybe first time in a long time, you didn't pick a bad Sunday to be here. It's okay that you're here, and you don't need to feel under any obligation to participate financially or anything like that. At the same time, there are few weekends for you to hear what it means to follow Jesus and to hear about the things, the way we view the world and the way we view our possessions, than when we are talking about our money. So I just invite you, if you're new, just listen and listen to how we approach how we handle our money and what God would say to us about that. And again, but feel no obligation or pressure to participate unless, of course, you want to do that. And in this passage in Colossians, Paul is actually talking about the reasons that he participates in something that I would call the advance of the gospel, the sharing of the good news. I don't know about you growing up, but when I was a kid, I was rarely, but probably never, the first person picked on anything to do with athletics or any team or something. You know how when it's like you're picking sides? I was always the last person picked because, I know this will be a surprise, but I was scrawny, okay? Like really scrawny. And so I was never selected. I was always on the outside and trying to look pitiful so that they'd feel sorry for me and let me participate. And I don't know, some of you actually may feel that way when it comes to the work of God. You may say, man, I don't have a way to participate in that. I'm not gifted, and I don't have any special talents, and I don't have a lot of influence, and I don't have a lot of money, and there's not a way for me to participate. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I love Carrie's story talking about her ministry and what she's doing. She's just a regular person and yet feeling somehow that God could use her to make a difference in the lives of people. And it's having an incredible impact to help people find Jesus. And all of us, everybody here, if you're a follower of Jesus, you can be a part of advancing the gospel. And in this passage, Paul reminds us, he's kind of explaining what he does and why he does it, and it's a glimpse into that helps us say, well, this would be a reason for us as well to participate in the advance of the gospel. All of us have a role. You have a role in advancing the gospel. Let me read the passage and you follow along. Colossians 1, 24 to 29. Here's what it says. This is the Apostle Paul speaking to a local church, like ours, maybe a little smaller, but like ours. Now I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am filling up what is lacking in Christ's afflictions for the sake of his body, that is, the church, of which I became a minister according to the stewardship from God that was given to me for you, to make the word of God fully known, the mystery hidden for ages and generations, but now revealed to his saints. To them, God chose to make known how great among the Gentiles are the riches of the glory of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Him we proclaim, warning everyone and teaching everyone with all wisdom, that we may present everyone mature in Christ. For this I toil, struggling with all his energy that he powerfully works within me. Paul explains in this reasons that he's embracing his role in advancing the gospel. And the first reason we find in verse 24, and here's what it says. He says, I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake. The first reason that Paul says he participates in the advance of the gospel is for the joy that it brings. It brings him joy, and the sacrifice is worth it because of the joy. The payday is the joy that it brings. Now, in verse 24, right there, and also in verse 29, the last verse, Paul talks about the suffering, the difficulty, the effort in the work of advancing the gospel. It is not easy. It never was intended to be easy. It's work. It's a task. It's effort. He actually uses words like suffering and labor, toil, and struggle. Doesn't sound like the easy life, does it? But that's what God has called us to. That's what following Jesus means. Following Jesus means we're willing to sacrifice in order to advance the gospel. It's true, most of us are not suffering the way the Apostle Paul suffered. He suffered much more drastically than we do. For Paul, there was part of his life that was at risk. But the purpose behind his suffering made it worthwhile. And that's what we find as well. The purpose, the reason for our sacrifice brings us joy. It's the reason behind it, because we know that advancing the gospel makes a difference in the lives of people. And so we can be joyful for it. Now, Paul uses an interesting phrase here. He says, if you look there in the passage, it talks about him lacking in suffering. And in the English language, the way it's translated, it can almost sound, he says, Jesus lacks in his suffering. To understand it, you have to know that Paul often equates his own suffering with the suffering of Jesus. He often counts his physical suffering a way that he connects with Jesus. And so he's actually not saying that Jesus lacked suffering. He was acknowledging, listen closely, that he had more suffering to come. So how in the world would Paul know that he has more suffering to come? And even, why would he keep going if he knew he had more suffering? That's a hard realization. But do you know that when you go back to Acts 9, the book of Acts, chapter 9, it tells the story. There it's listed as Saul's. Jesus changed his name from Saul to Paul. But if you're familiar with the story, he was blinded by a bright light, and Jesus spoke to him through the bright light and said, "Why are you persecuting me?" And Paul repented of that and wanted to follow Jesus, and he was still blind, and he went to a home where he was trying to orient himself as to what does it mean to follow Jesus. And Jesus spoke to another believer in the area. His name was Ananias. And he said, "Hey, Ananias, I need you to go talk to Paul and explain to him what it means to follow Jesus." Now, Ananias was a person just like you and me, and he had heard of Paul. And he goes, "Time out, Jesus. I need to remind you who Paul is. He's got a list with my name on it, and he has permission to kill me. I'm not going to go talk to Paul." And Jesus comes back to Ananias and says, "You must go to Paul, and don't worry, because I've already met Paul, and Paul wants to follow me too." And then in Acts 9:16, chapter 9, verse 16, Jesus says to Ananias this, "For I will show him," in other words, Jesus saying to Ananias, "I will show Paul how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." Before the Apostle Paul was baptized, a fellow believer came to him and said, "Let me tell you what awaits you. Let me tell you the difficulty that's coming your way." We don't know exactly what he told him, but probably what he told him is, "You will die for the sake of the gospel." So Paul's alive, and he knows that there's suffering yet to come. And yet, he says, "I rejoice in my sufferings because I get to be a part of advancing the gospel." And that's what it means to follow Jesus. You know, I look around the room, again, in our culture today, there are not people here that are typically suffering the way Paul was suffering, but we do sacrifice, and the same principle applies. I see people here whose stories I know, and they're suffering all around here. I look at some of the t-shirts you're wearing, and I can tell by the t-shirt you're wearing that you serve in kids or you serve in students, and you're sacrificing. That's exactly what Paul's talking about. But the sacrifice, the reason behind the sacrifice gives you joy. You don't do it regretting it. You do it with joy and excitement and eagerness. And that's what it means. That's what Paul is saying. I have joy because of the purpose. And then he describes the way the gospel goes. He says it goes from ages and generations. It processes through time. The gospel goes across time. For ages it goes. And it also goes across people groups. He says from Jew to Gentile. That's the way we participate in the gospel. Some of you are helping elderly parents find Jesus, and others are helping younger children find Jesus. Across generations, the gospel is advancing, and you are a part of it. And because it is, you have great joy. And it's the reason that we participate in the advance of the gospel. And what was a mystery is becoming known. It's becoming disclosed, is the way he says it. It's a beautiful thing. That's what we participate in the advance of the gospel. When you give and when you serve, you are participating in the advance of the gospel. And you should have joy. Rejoice because you are participating in the advance of the gospel if you give and when you serve. And it's something that we get to do here. And together we are advancing the gospel. Let me remind you just a little bit of how you are doing that. For more than 40 years, we've had and supported prison ministries, from the Genesis cell right across the street at the jail there to Celebrate Recovery and a chapel service at the retention center out on East 528. We've had, for a long time, prison ministries making a big difference in the life of people behind bars and the incarcerated. Pastor David and I and some other pastors recently visited the reception center with John Watson, who we support, and part of your giving helps support. He does prison ministry there, a chapel service every week there. And I'm thrilled to tell you, a former inmate himself, by the way, in the last 10 or 12 years, except for a break during COVID for obvious reasons, John Watson has baptized hundreds of people a year at the reception center. In fact, the last few years, almost half of the baptisms that we've had, John Watson has done at the reception center. And these little pieces of paper, I can't show the names of them, but these little pieces of paper are the pictures that John Watson sends my way every week that are the names of the men who are being baptized at the reception center because you give and support the work there. The gospel is advancing. And it's a beautiful thing. Not only that, but we're a part of something bigger than just what's happening in this room. Did you know we're a part of a multi-site work? We have a campus at Horizon West, a campus at Ocoee, a campus at DeBerry. We have a campus meeting right on John Lung location in Portuguese. We have one meeting in Spanish. All of these campuses are flourishing, and all of them are growing. I have a chart here that shows just a little bit of what's happening there. Since 2019 to 2025, the Horizon West has grown by 200%. The Spanish has grown by 274%. They're averaging 1,600 people in Spanish every weekend on this campus. Brazilian congregation, 1,071, 212% growth. Ocoee, the numbers aren't as large there, but think about it. In their room, they've almost doubled in size just since 2022. And then John Young, the biggest of the congregations, we've still grown by 15%. All of the campuses are growing and advancing the gospel, and you are a part of that. It wouldn't happen without you. And we are supporting at least 6 other churches right here in Central Florida that your giving has helped start or to revitalize. We're supporting churches also in Montreal. You all met David Portier, their pastor, a few weeks ago. We're also supporting churches in Boston and New York City, cities that it's really hard to plant and start churches, and we are doing it with you, with your help. We also have 21 adult missionaries scattered in places around the world. These are not, we partner with a larger agency that sends missionaries everywhere as well, but these are missionaries who were once sitting in seats in this congregation. They're part of our church. We have 21 adult missionaries around the world. They're in 9 regions, 11 different cities in Asia, Africa, Europe, and Central America. And even today, we have a group of volunteers on a mission trip in Egypt right now as we speak that are advancing the gospel in Egypt. And Madagascar, we started in 2014. We celebrated 10 years with them just recently. And in Madagascar, where there was could not find one Christian, anybody in the area where we went who claimed Jesus as Lord. But since we've been there, there have been tens of thousands of gospel presentations and almost 2,000 baptisms. I think we've got some pictures of the baptisms in Madagascar, 2,000. 13 churches, and even 2 of those churches are second-generation churches. Churches we started a church as well. And all of that wasn't easy, but it was worth it. And we rejoice, even though it cost us time and money and work and effort, and especially for the missionaries who were there. But we rejoice in the suffering because we know the purpose behind it. The second reason is found in verse 27. And it says this. This phrase is all I want to point out to you. This beautiful phrase that Paul uses. The motivation for him, Christ in you, the hope of glory. We sacrifice to advance the gospel because of the joy it brings us and the hope that is in us. Christ in you. Christ in you, the hope of glory. You know, there are many things that could separate us. There are people who could separate us. There are causes, ideals that could separate us. I could start arguments really quick just by throwing some things out there. Even, you know, your college football team or your pro football team. It's not hard to create arguments in a hurry. But even things that are more profound, it's really easy to create arguments between people. And that's why Paul says those things are not what unify us, and they're not what empower us. What unifies us is a person. His name is Jesus Christ, and he is in us. Christ in us is what unites us and empowers us to advance the gospel. The miracle of Jesus in us is what brings the commonalities, what brings the unity. That's what we're about. We're all advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul uses the phrase right after that, him we proclaim. It's Jesus that we proclaim, not something else. He is who we proclaim. Christ in us, the hope of glory. The hope we proclaim is only in Jesus Christ. And he's in us. Think about that. Christ in us, the hope of glory, in and through us. Paul uses 2 or 3 times in there, he uses this idea of Jesus working in us. It's his energy, it's his power that's causing us to do things. Yeah, it's his power that causes you to say, hey, I want to serve, and I'm happy to serve, and I want to give, and I'm happy to give. And the craziest thing, you guys text me all the time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give. Thank you. I'm so happy to be able to give. I'm blown away by that. I've gotten 2 or 3 of those this week. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to give. You know why? Because we know the joy and we have Jesus in us. He's the hope of glory. We can't wait to help other people experience it. I don't know for sure because I haven't asked. I do know one person like this, but I don't think the manager at Publix gets a text every week say, thank you for making me pay $8 for a dozen eggs. I don't think they're getting texts like that. But I get text from you, and you say, thank you. It's the joy that it gives me and the hope that is in me. I'm so grateful that I get to participate. Christ in us, the hope of glory. A few weeks ago, we've been praying about how to give and what our response, Betsy and I, have been. And as we've been contemplating this card and how we're supposed to fill it out and what would be the right thing to do. And, we just ask God, what do you want us to do? And then give us the boldness to do what you say. And I don't know about you, but in those kind of settings, when I'm praying through that or thinking through that, my immediate thought goes to all the goodness of God in my life, all the good things that he has done for me, the blessing that he has been to me, and the material blessings that he has bestowed upon Betsy and me, the family we get to have, and the place we live, and what we drive, and the vacations we get to take, and all of the things that are material blessings. I'm just super grateful for. Never dreamed of the chance to work here and serve with you, and all the things that we get to do. It's just humbling to be able to articulate them. And that's the first place that my mind goes. But I was driving home. Well, actually, I don't know which direction. I remember I was in my car, and a song came on. Somebody asked me, "How did you find that song?" The truth is, I don't find songs. Songs find me. And I just happened to be listening, and I don't even know where it was or what it was, but this song hit, and I started listening to it, and the lyric just captured my heart. And here's what the lyric said. He has done great things. Arms open wide, the Lamb crucified. Thorns on his brow, grace flowing down. Worthy is he. As high as the heavens above, great is his everlasting love. Rivers of mercy run over me. As far as the east from the west, he has removed all my sin, and I am forgiven by his blood. And it reminded me, the material blessings and the goodness of God it's awesome. But compared to the profound work of grace that Jesus Christ has done in my life, and compared to the profound reality that it's Christ in me, the hope of glory, or Christ in you, the hope of glory, that is the reason that we give, and that is the reason that we serve. It's Christ in us, the hope of glory. A few weeks ago also, a few different pastors went on another trip to a prison ministry. Just for the record, we're not going into prison, we're just visiting the prison, okay? So I know I got two different stories about prison, but we went to the Marion Correctional Institute, which is up near Ocala. And anytime we do a visit like that, it's just overwhelming. I don't know how to describe it, but there were 200 men dressed in blue. They started singing, and the energy and electricity in the little chapel there is overwhelming, and the passion with which they sing and the energy around it, it's just captivating. And I was sitting on the front row with 3 or 4 of us, and a lady named Angela Harris gave her testimony that night. I think I got a picture of her giving her testimony. That's Angela. Angela's part of our church. She sits right down here up front, usually at the 11:30 service. Angela was an inmate herself and met Christ through a prison ministry that we have. And after the prison ministry, she came through a ministry that we have that helped her deepen her walk with Christ and become a disciple of Jesus Christ. And today, Angela's now serving other inmates as they get out through your faithful giving. And that day, Angela stood in front of those 200 men dressed in blue and said, I've been where you are today, and I want to tell you, Jesus Christ is the hope that can change everything about you because he changed everything about me. It was a beautiful story, and she bragged on you, First Baptist Orlando, and the ministry that we had with her, on her and in the prison. It was a beautiful testimony. And then other people got up and spoke, and Christy Overton Johnson, who's, again, one of our partners, she has a ministry there called Victorious Living. That's how we got into the event and the chapel service that night. And she spoke, and it was fantastic, her call to Christ to the men there. And then the chaplains got up, and there are two chaplains, Kim and I've just gone blank on his name. Anyway, but Kim got up, Blaine and Kim. And Kim got up, and she said, I got some announcements to make. And you could hear a pin drop. Everybody got quiet. I got some important announcements to make. Apparently they liked the announcements. They were real quiet. And she said, before I get into all the details, I want to start with, before we gather again, 3 of you are going home. And I was sitting on the front row, and when she said that, I'm like, going home? Wait, because that means something different to me. Going home means like you're going to heaven. And so when she said going home, it took me a second to what she was saying. And then she said, yeah, Tom over here, you're going home next Friday. And Jack back in the back, you're going home 3 weeks from now. And Tom, you're going home 4 weeks from now. We are so happy. And every time she said it, people cheered and cheered and cheered. It was awesome. And I'm sitting on the front row thinking, if I went to church Sunday and I said, 3 of you are going home before next Sunday. And then if I started pointing to people and calling names, right, it would be completely different. But it was just beautiful. That night, got home, and the whole experience playing back in my mind. I'm thinking, Christ in me, the hope of glory. Isn't that what we're about? Isn't that what we do? We're setting captives free. We're helping them find their way home. Not captives that are wearing blue at Marion Correctional, but captives like you and me one day, who are captive to our own ways, captive to our own desires. And Jesus has set us free and prepared us to say, hey, we're going home one day. And that's what we're about. And I just want to remind you, that is the work that we do. We prepare people to go home. And it's why we give, and it's why we serve. And it brings us great joy because of the hope that is in us. Today I want to end a little bit differently. I want us to spend a few minutes listening to God. And I'm going to invite the team to actually sing the song that God used to speak to me. It's more of a chorus than a song. They're going to sing it a time or two through. And I'm going to invite you to be still. Don't move. We got time yet in the service. Be still. Be quiet. Maybe hold a card in your hand. That's what I'm going to do. And contemplate. God, for the marvelous work of grace that you've done in my life, how do you want me to respond? What do you want me to do? Maybe it is giving. Maybe it is serving. Maybe there's a relationship that needs to be healed. Maybe there's a step of obedience in your life. Maybe you need to be baptized. Maybe you need to begin to follow Jesus for the very first time. But as we contemplate the work that Jesus has accomplished for us, our appropriate response is to say, how do you want me to participate in the advance of the gospel? Because of the joy it gives me and the hope that it is in me. The words will be on the screen, but I want to invite you just to stay seated, be still, and listen to God. Let's worship together.
He has done great things. He has done great things. Arms open wide, the Lamb crucified, worthy is he. He has done great things. Our God has done great things. Thorns on his brow, grace flowing down, worthy is he. As high as the heavens above, great is his everlasting love. Rivers of mercy run over us. As far as the east from the west, he has removed all our sin. We are forgiven by his blood.
Isn't that beautiful? I'm going to invite you to stand. I want this song ringing in your heart and in your mind this week. And let's just sing it together and remind ourselves what Jesus has done for us. Let's worship.
He has done great things. Yes, he has. He has done great things. Oh, arms open wide, the Lamb crucified, worthy is he, so worthy. He has done great things. Our God has done great things. Thorns on his brow, grace flowing down, worthy is he. Oh, so worthy. As high as the heavens above, great is his everlasting love. Rivers of mercy run over us, run over us. As far as the east from the west, he has removed all our sin. We are forgiven. Thank you, Jesus, by his blood.
Thank you guys for leading, and thank you guys for singing. Hey, hang tight for just a second. I got something so exciting to tell you about. The people who left early are going to be so bummed that they didn't stay. Rarely do I get an opportunity to do this. Because of your generosity and because of Christy Overton Johnson and the ministry there, and Blaine and Kim starting last weekend and continuing today, we are live streaming this service into the Marion Correctional Institution. So, wait a second. They're watching us right now, and I know you can do better than that. I want you to help me welcome and tell them thank you for being a part of what we're doing right now. Help welcome Marion County. I think they have some pictures. I was supposed to show that earlier. Terry, can you guys show pictures up here or not? Did they already? They already. Oh yeah, there we go. Look at that. That's last Sunday. Now you go tell those people that left early what they missed today. Don't ever leave early. You never tell what's going to happen. God bless you. We'll see you back next Sunday. Bring your card and your gift and be ready to go. Have a great week. God bless you.